Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Be Like Christ. We are in Proverbs chapter 20 today. Up on the screen in front of you, you have our PDF. It's an outline of this chapter, and we have one for every chapter of the book of Proverbs so far. And for 5 small payments of $19.95, you can... What's that? I guess we give them away for free on our website. How will I afford my private jet? No? Oh, okay. I guess they're free. There's a link down in the description. Our first section of our outline is always our breakdown of the book. We've broken Proverbs down into 3 different sections. This is just my outline, kind of my breaking down. It's consistent with most people's, though, but there's nothing inspired about my breakdown here. The first 9 chapters, the way of wisdom versus the way of folly. And now, being in chapter 20, we are moving through the Proverbs of Solomon, which will take us through 29. And then in chapter 30 and 31, we have Proverbs from 2 other guys. We wanted to find some words today, 2 specifically, and these 2 we have not seen in the book of Proverbs so far. The first one is aloof, A-L-O-O-F, in verse 3. This is to stay far away from something, distant or detached from it. And then we have to winnow. This is like an old farming agricultural term, using the wind to sift grain. And so what you would do is as the wind was blowing, you would take your grain that you've harvested and you'd throw it up in the air, and the chaff or the useless part is very light, leafy, and it would blow away in the wind, and then all the good grain, the edible stuff, would fall to the ground. So you're sifting your grain, separating the good from the bad. That's winnowing. And very quickly, let's go over our interpretive principle if you haven't heard it already. As you read through the book of Proverbs, it's very important to keep in mind that the Proverbs are talking about principles, not promises. The wise statements that are in Proverbs are general truths, but not absolutes in every case. We will continue our pattern and our outlines for these Proverbs of Solomon by going over 3 highlighted Proverbs and bringing attention to them, talking about them, making sure we understand them, and then drawing application from them for our lives. And I hope you're doing that with all of the Proverbs that we've highlighted and the others that you're reading in your own personal study. Proverb number 1 for today is coming from verse 1. And it's this, quote, "Wine is a mocker, strong drink is a brawler, and whoever is led astray by it is not wise." Alcohol makes men into brawlers and into mockers, which are not traits of wise men, as we've discussed. Wise men are respectful and they are self-controlled. When a person gets drunk, the alcohol that is inside of them is guiding their decision-making and affecting their decision-making. Those who are led in this way by alcohol are going to be led astray, as the text says, led astray into making foolish choices and decisions. Knowing this, we don't ever want to put ourselves in a position where we're being led by strong drinks. We want to be led by better things than that. A wise man must always be sober, his mind clear and discerning, so he can make godly choices at every instance, at every circumstance. He won't allow himself to be led by anything that might cause him to sin. He's smarter than that. The Apostle Paul wrote a letter to the church at Ephesus, and he told them not to be filled up with wine, but to be filled up with something else. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 18. "And do not get drunk with wine, for that is debauchery, but be filled with the Spirit." You have a choice what you're going to be filled up with. You can be filled up with alcohol, which is going to lead you into foolishness, or you can be filled up with the Spirit of God and the instructions of the Spirit of God, which will lead you down the path of wisdom and godliness, right? So which one are you going to choose? The choice should be clear. Our second proverb for today comes from verse 3. "It is an honor for a man to keep aloof from strife, but every fool will be quarreling." So it's an honorable thing for a man to avoid arguments and to be able to diffuse tense situations. A wise man knows that arguing and anger are very rarely productive. We've seen that in other proverbs. So he's very careful. He discerns tense situations, and he knows how to keep them from boiling over. A wise man also doesn't walk into environments where he knows a lot of quarreling is going to be present. He keeps his distance from those kinds of unproductive places. He knows how anger often leads to sin, and he wants to avoid putting himself in those situations. He's not eager to argue. He may do it if he has to, or has to stand on principle, but he's not eager to get into arguments with people, and he knows how to keep arguments from happening. On the other hand, every encounter that the fool has devolves into an argument. He fights about petty things, he keeps company with other people who love to quarrel, and he has no skills whatsoever to de-escalate a situation. He's eager to argue about everything, and he gives no pause to consider the sins that arguing might lead him into. And now proverb number 3 for today, and it's actually 2 proverbs. I'm going to pull on one from chapter 16 as well and bring it into this discussion. But the one from chapter 20 is in verse 29. The glory of young men is their strength, but the splendor of old men is their gray hair. And then in chapter 16, verse 31, it says, gray hair is a crown of glory. It is gained in a righteous life. You know, young people are blessed with some great traits, great characteristics like strength, health, and beauty. But those are not the only admirable characteristics that a person can have. Solomon writes to us and he tells us that the gray hair of the elderly is a crown of glory. It's a sign of their wisdom and their experience. From what I've seen of most Western cultures admire youth, but they really don't value older people the way that they should. You see this in our kind of pop culture, in the people who are lifted up in our society. It's the young, it's the beautiful, and all of the older people are trying to be young again and pretend like they're not old. These Western cultures, they worship youthfulness, but they've forgotten to seek the wisdom of the old, and I think that this is a real mistake. In the big picture, it seems inevitable to me that a culture that's obsessed with just youth and beauty and sees those as the greatest virtues that a person could have will definitely be shallower than a culture that respects the old and honors them as a fountain of wisdom. Those are our 3 proverbs for today in Proverbs 20. If there were any that stood out to you and any lessons that you took away from any of the other ones in chapter 20, leave them down in the comment section. I'd be interested to hear. Until, Lord willing, tomorrow, I hope you have a fantastic day, and tomorrow we'll do chapter 21.